So we're almost done. Almost. By covering personality disorders. They are enduring patterns of thinking, feeling, or relating to others, or controlling impulses that deviate from cultural expectations and cause distress or impaired functioning. There are 10 specific personality disorders, and they fall into 3 clusters: odd eccentric, dramatic erratic, and anxious inhibited. Given that 15% of the US population has a personality disorder. So, the first cluster, odd eccentric. You might have this disorder if you this paranoid disorder if you have distrust in others, suspicion that people have sinister motives. You challenge loyalty of friends and read hostile intention into others' actions. You're prone to anger, aggressive outbursts, but otherwise emotionally cold, often jealous, guarded, secretive, and overly serious. You're a schizoid personality disorder if you have an extreme introversion. You withdraw from relationships. You prefer to be alone, have little interest in others. You are humorless, distant, often absorbed with own thoughts and feelings, a daydreamer. You're fearful of closeness, with poor social skills, often seen as a loner. Schizotypal, or typo. You have a peculiar or eccentric manners of speaking or dressing. You have strange beliefs. Magical thinking, such as ESP or telepathy. You have difficulty forming relationships. You may react oddly in conversation, not respond or talk to self. Your speech could be elaborate or difficult to follow. You might have one of these disorders if you are antisocial. You have an impoverished moral sense of conscience. You have a history of deception. Crime, legal problems, impulsive, aggressive, or violent behavior. You have little emotional empathy or remorse for hurting others. You're manipulative, careless, callous, at high risk for substance abuse and alcoholism. Antisocial is generally related to earlier conduct disorders. You have a borderline disorder if you have unstable moods and intense, stormy personal relationships. You have frequent mood changes and anger, unpredictable impulses, self-mutilation or suicidal threats or gestures to get attention or manipulate others, self-image fluctuation, and a tendency to see others as all good or all bad. Borderline is generally the crazy ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend. Also with histrionic, constant attention seeking. So your borderline is your crazy stalker, ex-boyfriend, ex-girlfriend. Histrionic disorder is constant attention seeking, grandiose language, provocative dress, exaggerated illness, all to gain attention. Believes that everyone loves them. Emotional, lively, overly dramatic, enthusiastic, and excessively flirtatious. Shallow and label emotions. So on stage, this is probably your drama queen. And of course, we know our narcissistic disorder. And these are other types of personalities disorders. You can read them yourselves, and after having read these descriptions, how many people feel that they know someone with a personality disorder? You keep using that word, antisocial. I don't think you know what that means. We sometimes refer to ourselves as antisocial when we don't want to go out or hang out with people, but it really means a pervasive pattern of disregard for and violation of rights in others that began in childhood or early adolescence and continues into adulthood. So conduct disorders. Adults with APD have a history of conduct disorder before the age of 15. They show 3 or more of a set of 7 diagnostic signs: illegal behavior, deception, impulsivity, physical aggression, recklessness, irresponsibility, and a lack of remorse for wrongdoing. About 3.6% of the general population has APD, and the rate occurrence in men is 3 times higher than the rate in women. So these are your career criminals and worse. Self-harming behaviors, such as suicide, refers to intentional self-inflicted death or injury. It's the 10th leading cause of death in the US and second leading cause of death among people 15 to 24 years of age. An attempt just recently occurred at OU. If you got signed up for OU alerts, you got this blast about an attempt in the Adams Hall Tower, I believe. 80% of suicides in the US and then around the world occur among men. And in the US, white people are much more likely to kill themselves, accounting for 90% of all suicides. A non-fatal suicide attempt, potentially harmful, which a person engages in potentially harmful behavior with some intention of dying, occurs more frequently than suicide deaths. 15% of adults have seriously considered suicide at some point, and 5% have made a plan to kill themselves, and 5% have actually made a suicide attempt. Non-suicidal self-injury is the direct, deliberate destruction of body tissue in the absence of any attempt to die, such as cutting. 15 to 20% of adolescents and 3 to 6% of adults report engaging in NSSI at some point in their lifetime. A recent study suggests that people who engage in self-injury have a very strong emotional and physiological response to negative events, that they perceive this response as intolerable, and that NSSI serves to diminish the intensity of this response. So instead of feeling pain as a result of some event in their life, it's easier to cut or injure oneself and to focus on that physical pain, which is less or more tolerable than that emotional pain. So moving on to some other types of treatment, support group and self-help groups are another form of treatment. Self-help groups, they are discussion groups that focus on a particular disorder or difficult life experience and then often run by peers who have themselves struggled with the same issues, such as Alcoholics Anonymous, certain depression groups, and so forth and so on. Addiction groups, cigarette smoking, drug use, avoiding drugs groups are some of them. So in addition to being cost effective, self-help and support groups allow people to realize they are not the only ones with a particular problem and give them an opportunity to offer guidance and support to each other, often other based on personal experience of success. If you've seen the movie Fight Club, there are a lot of self-help and support groups that the main character begins to cycle around for his own benefit, not related to the actual issues suffered by the individuals in the groups, which leads us to issues with group and self-help. You may have members that are disruptive or aggressive or encourage behaviors that are counter-therapeutic. They can suggest certain things. If you're in a drug quitting program, they might be links to additional drugs. So people with moderate problems may be exposed to people with severe problems, and they may become oversensitized to symptoms that they may not have otherwise found disturbing. So you might have mild symptoms, and you might be involved in groups of people with severe symptoms, and you might start to think you have those problems. But by assuming that you have those problems, you create those problems within yourself. There's great variation in the quality of mental health support groups. Another issue is that there are treatment illusions. Recovery could be produced by non-specific treatment effects that are not related to the specific mechanisms by which the treatment is supposed to be working, such as natural improvement, our tendency to get better or return to our mean or average level. A placebo effect, the belief that the treatment will help us, actually does help us, but not because it's the treatment, but that we have changed our mindset. Third is reconstructive memory. Our desire to want to get better may actually change our memory of how we were, so that our current state is still better than the state we remember, which was actually the same state, but we remembered it to be worse than it actually is. So here's the placebo effect. As you can see, at a milder scores, so lower scores on this measure, there's really no differentiation between the placebo effect and the actual treatment effect. It's only in extreme cases where there's a difference in drug effectiveness. So how do we know if psychotherapy works at all? It's one of the criticisms about why people don't seek treatment because they believe it doesn't or won't work. We know by studying treatment outcome, using treatment outcome studies, which evaluate whether a particular treatment works, often in relation to some other treatment or a control group. Most psychotherapies work about equally well. Common factors shared by all forms of psychotherapy, such as contact with and empathy from a professional, contribute to this change. So being a good psychologist, being a good person, a good friend, these are common characteristics that might help someone in need. So it's hard to really distinguish which one, behavioral, cognitive, humanistic, is better. It's really could just be a specific person effect. So well-established treatments are one way of measuring treatments types. So well-established treatments are those with a high level of support, evidence from several randomized studies, and to a lesser degree, probably efficacious treatments are those with preliminary support. So these ratings respond to this, as you can see here. These are the different results regarding depression and CBT. So PT equals meds, so psychotherapy equals meds. Psychotherapy plus meds is better than either alone. Panic disorders, psychotherapy is better than meds at follow-up. But psychotherapy and meds are the same at the end of treatment. Both is better than a placebo. And so that's how you read the rest of this. There are other issues with treatment. The literature does not have a large number of participants who are of ethnic minority status, so it's unclear if these treatments work equally well with ethnic and culturally diverse group. Latrogenic illness is a disorder or symptom that occurs as a result of a medical or psychotherapeutic treatment itself. The psychotherapist becomes convinced that a client has a disorder that in fact the client does not have. So that's that 90 personality disorder. Okay, so this chart represents some common treatments, DARE programs, and Scared Straight, and what they actually the empirical effects are. You might believe that Scared Straight, just as is shown on TV shows, actually work, boot camp and DARE programs, but they actually have worse effects. So just because we implement DARE programs, how many of you experienced a DARE program in middle or high school? I have, and I don't think it works. It's just because I think the idea was dare to not do drugs, so it was not really an effective message. So the idea of psychotherapy is that it should follow ethical standards, including striving to benefit the clients, do no harm. So these are similar to the IRB standards. Establish trust with the clients, promote accuracy, honesty, and truthfulness, seeking fairness in treatment, and taking precautions to avoid biases, and respecting the dignity and worth of all people. So the idea is a lot of patients come in with a lot of things that are very private that they share with you, and you should respect them in that sense. So some links to help. So the first one is the American Association of Suicidology. It's a website. You can talk about suicide, upturned mood and fallen prolonged, failed love interest, loss of loved one, stressful event that is shameful, family history of suicide, risky behavior, doing bad in school, feeling trapped, and some signs. Oh, these are some signs that someone might be thinking of suicide. Yeah, so giving away possessions. These are some OU campus resources. Number 9 crisis hotline, National Suicide Prevention, and of course your counseling psych clinic. And that concludes our presentation. Hope you guys enjoy your weekend. I know the lecture was especially long. Your psych treatment is due this weekend, and next weekend will be stress and health. Your stress and health won't be due. Actually, I think I left it due on the next Saturday. But anyways, I'll cover that more in detail when I upload that lecture next week. So have a good Thanksgiving.